Get the med kit! He's still got a pulse.
Gosh.
He's starting compressions now. Stay with me, stay with me. Heart's still pumping. Robbie! Robbie! He's done, dude. Damn it!
Oh, God, no.
Damn it!
On February 26, 2019, a devastating tragedy struck in Evansville, Indiana. Robert "Robbie" Dorr, a dedicated firefighter who was beloved by many, was shot right after returning home from an extra shift. The perpetrator vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of grief and mourning. With very few leads to go on, the investigation was long and difficult. But when the killer was finally brought to light, it shocked everyone who knew Robbie. Who was that? And why did they assassinate such a kind-hearted and well-respected man? Before we dive into the details, make sure to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell so you never miss any of our new videos. Now let's get into it. Robbie Dorr was born on June 22, 1967. From a young age, he knew he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps to become a fireman. After graduating high school in 1985, Robbie enrolled in the Firefighter Academy and graduated at 24. Over the next 28 years, he had become a beloved figure in his community. Robbie was known for his unwavering commitment to public service and his compassionate nature. He was recognized for his bravery during an intense fire at an apartment building in downtown Evansville on January 6, 2003, where he rescued 12 people and earned a Silver Merit Award for his heroic actions. Throughout his career, Robbie was offered multiple promotions, but he always turned them down. He preferred to stay on the front lines, where he felt he could make the most impact. When he wasn't at the firehouse, he picked up shifts at a local fast food restaurant, always willing to lend a hand. It was there that he met Elizabeth "Becky" Fox, who would eventually become his wife. Robbie and Becky had known each other for over 11 years before marrying in Panama City, Florida. Becky, born in 1971, had faced a tough start to life. She spent her early childhood in foster care until she was adopted by the Fox family, who also adopted another girl named Mandy. Becky and Mandy grew up as sisters, incredibly close, even though they weren't related by blood. They frequently met and even went on double dates sometimes. Before marrying Robbie, Becky had been married 5 times and had 2 sons. Robbie also had a daughter from a previous relationship. Despite the complexities of their blended family, they found a deep connection with each other. Tragically, just 145 days after they tied the knot, Robbie's life came to an end. It was around 7 p.m. on February 26, 2019. Robbie pulled into his driveway after finishing a long 12-hour shift at the Evansville Fire Department. It had been a tiring day for Robbie, since he had picked up an extra shift to cover for a friend. All he wanted was to relax and spend some precious time with his wife before heading to bed. But sadly, he wouldn't even make it to the front door. As Robbie got out of his truck, he turned to grab his bag from the back of the vehicle. That's when, out of nowhere, 2 quick shots rang out and hit him in the back. He tried to take cover behind the truck, but as he moved, the shooter fired again, and he collapsed with a total 5-shot wounds. Inside the house, Becky heard the gunfire and rushed out, screaming in panic. She immediately called 911, praying for the best.
I need an ambulance.
What's the address?
I need help, please.
What's the address?
2728 Oakley Street.
What's going on there?
My husband just got shot.
You said your husband just got shot?
Yes. Ma'am, all I saw was my husband's headlights pull into the driveway, and then I heard a bunch of popping.
Where's your husband?
He's on our front walk.
Police and EMTs raced to the scene, but what they found was pure chaos and heartbreak. Many of them knew Robbie personally. He was one of their own. Robbie had been a firefighter for nearly 30 years, and it couldn't be more devastating for other officers to see their friend and fellow first responder lying on the ground. Despite their best efforts, it was too late. Robbie had already suffered too much damage, and there was nothing they could do to save him.
Robbie! Robbie! He's done, dude. Damn it!
Oh, God, no.
Damn it! You know him? This is a small department, man. He's got a fireman shirt on. Let's get them up out of here. Hey, man, let's go back this way. Come on. Let's go back. Hey, I know, man. Listen, I don't want to be rude or disrespectful, but we got to get that fire out of here because that's what it bears.
As the night unfolded, police confirmed that they had received multiple calls reporting shots fired just after 7 p.m. They began talking to neighbors, hoping to gather any information about a potential suspect. But oddly, they found nothing to work with. No evidence, no vehicle descriptions, no leads. The angle of the shots suggested the shooter had been close, possibly near the porch, or even the front door. Several shots had been fired, and some stray bullets had even hit homes across the street. But there were no spent casings on the ground, as if the shooter had picked them up before fleeing. But it was impossible. Everything had happened so quickly that there was no time to collect them. That led the detectives to another conclusion. The murder weapon might be a revolver, a type of gun that would keep the casings inside instead of spitting them out. As officers canvassed the neighborhood, they expected someone to hear the sound of tires screeching, the roar of an engine from a getaway vehicle, or at least a figure running by. But there was nothing. It was like the shooter had simply vanished, leaving no trace behind. When the news reached Robbie and Becky's children, they were devastated. Their sons were completely in shock, and their daughter could barely hold herself together.
Still, everything's being investigated.
Is he alive?
No, he's not.
Oh my god.
No.
Go out there, okay?
You can't.
They wouldn't even let me out there with them.
As part of standard procedure, detectives collected Robbie's phone, which had been in his pocket when he was shot. They also seized Becky's phone and obtained a search warrant to comb through the door home. But when Becky's phone records were retrieved from Sprint, something strange caught their attention. There was a discrepancy between Becky's phone logs and Sprint's official records from the night of the shooting. According to Sprint's logs, Becky had been on a call from 6:46 p.m. to 6:51 p.m., just 15 minutes before Robbie was murdered. The problem? This call had been deleted from her phone's history. Why did she have to delete it? Was she hiding something? To find the answer, detectives needed to find out who was on the other end of that call. The number was saved in Becky's contacts as Larry Ali. Digging deeper, they discovered that Larry was closer than they thought. He is Larry Richmond Sr., the boyfriend of Becky's adopted sister Mandy. At first glance, this wasn't anything suspicious. People call family members and their partners all the time. But then came a twist. Larry Richmond Sr. wasn't just any ordinary guy. He was a recent parolee, having just been released from prison. And his crime was murder. In June 1996, while hanging out with friends, Larry showed off a gun he claimed to have found. That day, during an attempted robbery, he shot and killed 70-year-old James Montgomery. Though only a teenager, Larry was tried as an adult due to the crime's severity and faced the death penalty. To avoid it, he took a plea deal and was sentenced to 45 years. However, with good behavior and time served, he was released after serving about half his sentence. Just 11 months after his release, Larry started dating Amanda, the adopted sister of Becky. And now, less than 15 minutes before Robbie was killed in his own driveway, Becky had been on the phone with him, the man who had a prior record of shooting someone dead. But that wasn't all they found. During the search of the Doer home, detectives stumbled upon something chilling. In the master bedroom, tucked away in a chest of drawers, they found a letter, handwritten by Robbie Doer himself and addressed to Becky. The contents revealed cracks in their seemingly perfect marriage. Robbie suspected that Becky was romantically involved with someone else. Could this be a motive for the sinister act? The very next day, Robbie's postmortem exam was completed, and the results deepened the mystery. The coroner confirmed that Robbie had been hit by both a .45 caliber jacketed slug and 4 buckshot pellets. The .45 round had passed straight through his shoulder and neck. This unusual mix of ammunition raised red flags for detectives. It suggested the use of a specific type of firearm, a Taurus Judge. This gun model could chamber more than one type of ammo, the perfect weapon for a killer looking to maximize damage while minimizing evidence. As the investigation dragged on with no clear arrests, the community refused to stand idle. The Evansville Fire Department, where Robbie had served for nearly 30 years, stepped up, creating a reward fund for any information leading to an arrest and conviction.
I would hope the public would come forward because it's the right thing to do. But as I said before, if there's just somebody out there that feels like, well, what I have to share is really not worthwhile, if a few dollars is a motivator for them to come forward and that's what happens to break the case open, then that's absolutely what we're working for.
When detectives confronted Becky about the suspicious phone call made just minutes before Robbie was killed, she initially denied everything. She claimed she didn't remember making the call and didn't recognize the number. But detectives weren't fooled. They had her go through every contact in her phone, starting from the A's, until she reached the one labeled Larry Alley. "Oh, that's my sister's boyfriend," she admitted, suddenly remembering the man she previously claimed not to know. Detectives pushed harder, pointing out that she had been specific about everything else, until this. Becky's nerves were obvious, but she stuck to her story, claiming she barely knew Larry Richmond Sr. and had only hung out with him once or twice. She admitted calling him that night, but just to ask about installing sensor lights around the house because it was too dark. However, detectives didn't buy it, especially given the timing. And if the call was so harmless, why had she deleted it? Becky hesitated for a moment, then replied that she didn't want the police to think she was having an affair, adding that Robbie was insecure and often needed reassurance about their relationship. But the damage was done. Her evasiveness and the strange timing of the deleted call only deepened suspicions. Despite her insistence that she had never cheated on Robbie or lied about anything significant, the detectives saw through the cracks.
Nothing in that conversation had anything to do with hurting anybody. It had to do with some stupid freaking lights, and it had to do with if we wanted to go out with them that weekend. And I told him.
Why delete it then?
Because I typically delete all.
No, you don't. You deleted it. And then you didn't tell me about it. And then now we're here. You're lying. And I'm not accusing you of lying. I'm showing you facts of why you've lied. Your story doesn't add up.
But lying about a phone call didn't make Becky a murderer. The police needed more solid evidence. As the investigation continued, an unexpected piece of information came up. A tourist judge had been stolen from the River City pawn shop, just 5 miles from Oakley Street, and only a 15-minute drive from Robbie's house, about 6 months before Robbie was killed. When investigators looked into the pawn shop's employees, a shocking twist emerged. Larry Richmond Jr. used to work there. Connecting the dots, they realized that Larry Jr. was the son of Larry Richmond Sr. Immediately, they brought both men in for questioning. Larry Sr. had clearly learned from his past experience when questioned about a shooting. This time, he quickly refused to speak and demanded a lawyer. Unlike his father, Larry Jr. was unexpectedly cooperative. He handed over his phone without hesitation, giving detectives full access. That's when they made a startling discovery: a photo of a tourist judge, the same type of revolver believed to be the murder weapon.
I don't know anything about the murder. No, but I did take the gun from my workplace.
Where's the gun now?
Probably in Mandy's house.
Why would you need this?
That's where my daddy put it.
Larry Jr. confessed that, while working at a pawn shop, he had stolen the firearm. A few days later, he gave it to his father, though fully aware that as a convicted felon, Larry Sr. was legally prohibited from possessing firearms, and that alone was a felony. But that wasn't all. Investigators also found text conversations between Larry Jr. and Sr. discussing that very gun. Even more disturbing, Jr. recalled his father telling him, "If shit goes down, bury the gun." Following the lead, police turned to Amanda "Mandy" Fillmore, Becky's sister and Larry Sr.'s girlfriend. When questioned about Larry's whereabouts on the night of the murder, Mandy first claimed he was at home with her all night, watching movies, but a moment later she backtracked. "Oh, wait, actually, I have no idea where he was that night. I was trying to find him." She even had text messages proving she had been calling him repeatedly, asking where he was, meaning Larry had no alibi for the night of Robbie's murder. At this point, detectives were certain that the murder weapon had been buried around Mandy's house, just as Larry Jr. had been told to do if things went sideways. Police wasted no time and searched the property. They found CCTV footage of Larry Sr. walking into the backyard, carrying a suspicious-looking bag. Then they dug up the backyard and found a bag filled with guns, 3 total with their serial numbers completely scratched off. However, the tourist judge was not there. Even though they hadn't found the gun that killed Robbie, what they did uncover proved that Larry Sr. was deeply involved in illegal activity. The mounting evidence against him brought serious felony charges, which were enough to keep him behind bars. Ultimately, he struck a plea deal and was sentenced to 5 years for federal weapons violations. However, the investigation into Robbie Doerr's murder was far from over. A day after police uncovered the stash of illegal guns at Amanda Fillmore's property, they arrested Becky, but not for murder. Not yet. Instead, she was charged with obstruction of justice for lying to investigators, particularly about the deleted phone calls with Larry Sr. Becky quickly posted bail, but the walls were closing in. As she anxiously awaited potential trial proceedings, an unexpected twist emerged, this time from inside the family. Nathaniel, Becky's son and Robbie's stepson, reached out to detectives. He had found something unusual. While organizing sympathy cards sent after Robbie's funeral, Nathaniel noticed a small slip of paper fall out of one of the cards sent to Becky. Curious, he picked it up. The note read, "We need to talk, Larry." Nathaniel immediately turned it over to the police. At this point, the affair between Becky and Larry Sr. was undeniable. Even Larry Jr. admitted to police that Becky and his father had been involved romantically, as he had seen them kiss before. Not long after that, detectives received an unexpected call from the prison where Larry Sr. was serving his 5-year sentence for the gun charges. But this time, the call wasn't from Larry. It was from another inmate who had grown close to him on the inside. This inmate had become chummy with Larry, and over time, managed to extract some crucial information. He told detectives that Larry had openly talked about the murder of Robbie Doerr. According to the inmate, Larry Sr. admitted that Robbie had discovered the affair between him and Becky, and as Larry chillingly put it, he had to go. This was the breakthrough detectives had been waiting for. Investigators then performed a full forensic extraction of Larry Sr.'s phone. This process created a carbon copy of everything stored on it: texts, calls, files, and most importantly, location data. As they sifted through over 42,000 location caches, they could practically trace every single step Larry had taken leading up to the murder. And the results were damning. On the night of February 26, 2019, around the exact time of Robbie Doerr's murder, Larry's phone placed him within 200 feet of the Doerr Fox residence, right near the crime scene. Then shortly before that 5-minute phone call between Becky and him, Larry had opened a police radio scanner app on his phone. An app commonly used by hobbyists, but also by criminals to monitor police activity. Moments after the phone call with Becky, Larry turned off his phone, making sure it couldn't be tracked during the time of the murder. It remained off until 7:14 p.m., about 9 minutes after Robbie had been shot, when he turned it back on and immediately checked the police scanner app again, likely to see if anyone had reported the crime yet. 7 months after Robbie's death, armed with new evidence, detectives finally charged Becky Fox Doerr with withholding information and obstruction of justice in connection with her husband's murder. On October 25, 2019, news broke that the charges against Becky Fox Doerr had been surprisingly and suddenly dropped. At first, it seemed like a shocking twist, but the truth behind the decision was far more strategic. The prosecutor's office quickly clarified that the charges were dropped at the request of the police department, not because of a lack of evidence, but to avoid jeopardizing the ongoing murder investigation. They planned to wait until Larry Richmond Sr. completed his 5-year sentence for federal gun charges before starting Robbie's murder trial. The strategy was simple: avoid the risk of sentences running concurrently, and ensure Larry served as much time as possible. However, the investigation into Becky Fox Dorr as a co-conspirator was still very much active. It took until July 2022 for prosecutors to fully organize their case and present it to a grand jury. But during this process, Becky made a critical mistake, one that finally gave authorities an easy way to bring her down. Despite overwhelming evidence of her affair with Larry Richmond Sr., Becky continued to lie about it, even under oath. While lying to police is one thing, lying to a grand jury is an entirely different matter. It's called perjury, and it's a serious crime. No matter how many times she flatly denied having any romantic involvement with Larry Sr., detectives had plenty of evidence to prove otherwise. Text messages, witness statements, and testimony from Larry Jr. One of the most significant pieces of evidence was a ramen pack smuggled into the prison where both Becky and Larry Sr. were being held. Hidden inside the pack was a note addressed to someone named Barbie. The message read, "Hello Barbie, just wanted to drop you a line or two. They will bring plea after plea, don't fall for it. Keep your head up and go to trial." Then it ended with, "You know who." When a handwriting expert analyzed the note, the match was undeniable. The handwriting was identical to that on the condolence letter Larry Sr. had written after Robbie's death. Despite Becky insisting she wasn't Barbie, there was no one else in that prison who Larry Sr. could be referring to. With her perjury now undeniable, Becky was arrested in August 2022 and charged accordingly. Her bond was set at $50,000. But while she sat in jail awaiting the perjury case, she received even worse news. The final charges named both Becky and Larry Sr. as co-defendants in the murder of Robbie Dorr. Becky Fox Dorr's trial finally began on May 6, 2024, more than 5 years after the brutal murder of her husband. In the courtroom, Becky entered a plea of not guilty to charges of aiding, inducing, or causing murder and conspiracy to commit murder. But the prosecution wasted no time setting the tone. Elizabeth Fox Dorr thought she could delete a phone call and get away with murder. But what she didn't count on was the relentless effort of the Evansville Police Department. This case wasn't built on flimsy guesses. It was the result of years of investigation, poring over digital evidence, phone records, surveillance footage, and testimony from both law enforcement and civilian witnesses. While there was a mountain of evidence pointing directly to Larry Richmond Sr. as the shooter, they also directly tying Becky to the murder was mostly circumstantial. Her defense attorney honed in on this, arguing there was no recorded confession, no direct threat, no text message spelling out the murder plot. However, the prosecution countered with what they believed was the heart of the conspiracy. The deleted phone call between Becky and Larry made minutes before the murder. The affair between them, which Robbie had recently discovered, and Larry's complete lack of motive to kill Robbie unless he was doing it for Becky. Furthermore, Becky had a clear financial motive for orchestrating her husband's murder. After Robbie Dorr's 30-year career with the Evansville Fire Department, Becky stood to gain his full pension, a hefty payout that prosecutors alleged she planned to use to pay Larry Richmond Sr. for carrying out the murder. Their case leaned heavily on the belief that Larry Sr. was undoubtedly the triggerman, but they also emphasized that Becky had to have known he was there. The shots were fired right from her doorway. There was no way she could have been oblivious. However, there were still cracks in the case. The biggest issue was the murder weapon. The Taurus judge was never found. Without the gun, it could be harder to seal the case. The jury began deliberations on May 14, 2024, after 6 intense days of evidence and testimony. After several hours, they returned with a verdict. Becky Fox Dorr was found guilty on 2 counts: conspiracy to commit murder and aiding, inducing, or causing murder. She was handed a massive 90 years behind bars without parole, essentially a life sentence. Meanwhile, Larry Richmond Sr. has just completed his 5-year sentence for the federal gun charges, and now set to face his day in court in March 2025. Thanks to the careful planning by investigators, who deliberately delayed his murder trial until he had served his full sentence. The case has been a roller coaster of hidden affairs and a web of lies that took over 5 years to fully unravel. Do you believe Becky's deleted call was just part of her usual habits or a deliberate cover-up? Did the jury get it right, or was Becky's 90-year sentence too harsh? Will Larry Sr. be found guilty at his upcoming trial? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if there's another case you'd like us to cover, don't hesitate to let us know. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into the darkest corners of true crime. Until next time, stay safe.